Welcome everyone. If you got cameras, we would love to see your faces. I'd love to see your in-person reactions of what you think of the whiskey. Unless it's a frowny face, in which case just turn it off. But yeah, no. We'll give it a few more minutes. So many people rocking up early. I so appreciate that. You know, I'm sure Darren can back me up. In the bartending community, bartenders are always late to everything.
Yeah.
Especially tastings. So
Yes. You tell them half an hour before you want them there.
Yeah. To be fair, I know some reps who are like that as well. I tell them an hour before the actual time of the thing, so they rock up it just in time. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now I'll share the tasting order in the chat for everybody that we're gonna go through, so that if you've got enough glassware to pour it all out, awesome, please do that. We highly recommend it. But if you are like me and running on one solo glass, that's fine too. All right. And some of our regular guys might have noticed that I'm not as in high definition or a little bit further away from my usual filming space. I'm stealing David's whiskey den up in Sydney. I'm here for the show. Hopefully I'll see some familiar faces there, but yes, normally I would be in much better resolution. All right. Oh, amazing. I thought you'd come into inheritance. I wish someone gave me an inheritance of whiskey this impressive. Like I tried to, I spent like 20 minutes trying to make it look good and like trying to sort the lighting and a bit closer, but I was like, oh no, it's just, my computer is never going to show the true glory and magnificence of David's shelves. If bottles go missing though, nobody saw anything. So, yeah. Well, we might wait one quick more minute, but I think we can crack on pretty soon. It's very exciting. They're all very punctual and I love it. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this absolutely exciting tasting tonight that we have with Darren Peck from Morris Distillery. Very, very dear friend. We love chatting with local Aussie brands, and I've been up to Morris a couple of times now. I highly recommend visiting, but we're going to get on to introducing him in a second. I've just got to go over some general housekeeping. If you've got 5 glasses, amazing. We definitely recommend pouring them out so you can taste them side by side. As usual, please don't drive after a tasting. I don't think we're tasting anything too high in alcohol content, but it's always good to drink responsibly. It's very important for us. All of our tastings are recorded, so if anybody wants to watch back, or for the guys who couldn't make it tonight and are going to watch another time, I think we'll be putting the link up for the recording tomorrow, depending on how quickly Ollie can get it out. If you have any questions or tasting notes or anything like that, please pop them in the chat. I'll read them out to Darren and we'll we'll make sure that we try and answer as many questions as possible. And I love hearing what you guys taste with the whiskey. I'm a little bit clogged up. I unfortunately got a little bit sick after my trip to the UK. So I am relying on you guys for some excellent tasting notes. And after the tasting tonight, bottles will be available for purchase with a cheeky little discount for everybody attending. There'll be 10% off all Morris whiskies. It's for Morris whiskey orders only though, because these bottles are being sent directly from the distillery, which is why we're getting the absolute amazing pleasure of having the cellar reserve bottles on offer as well. So that's just for Morris only orders. And again, the $200 and above free shipping applies. The only bottle that we will be tasting tonight that we don't have available for sale is the Muscat fortified wine. For those of you who probably opened your pack like I did and were like, oh, that's a really dark whiskey. It is a fortified wine that we're finishing off this tasting with, which should be a lovely little dessert at the end of our evening. But I think that's pretty much everything from my side covered. I'll put all the links in the tasting towards the end, and we'll run a poll at the end as well to see what your favorite was. But yeah, without too much further ado, I'll welcome the wonderfully talented Darren Peck, distiller, whiskey crafter extraordinaire, and he can talk us through everything about Morris whiskey, how it came about, and what goes into what we're tasting tonight.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that introduction. And the first thing I normally say, especially if I'm in a live room, is that if you need a translator, I'm sure Emma can translate in the comments. Okay. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me to taste these whiskies tonight. We are going to go through the cellar reserves. So cellar reserve signature, cellar reserve muscat, then the sherry barrel, then the smoked muscat. And the first one on the list will be the signature. And what I suggest we do is that we start having a smell and a taste of that. This is my signature, and I put it together really to be very approachable, very easy drinking. The difference with this one is the normal Australian liquid is around 40% ABV. This one is the higher 44 and was actually put together for the US market, but is such a good liquid that we decided that we needed to release it here as well. So that's why it's a cellar reserve. It's that little bit stronger. What you find is that helps carry some of those notes, some of those flavors, and you'll find that it has quite a lot of dried fruit and a real deep, rich character to it. So while you enjoy that and we start tasting the signature, I'll explain really where we came from. So Morris wines themselves, we've been going since 1859, and the town I'm in, Rutherglen, in northeast Victoria, right on the border with New South Wales, so the River Murray, was a gold rush area. So back in 1859, there was miners digging up gold all the way in this area, and all the towns had different names, and I believe Rutherglen's was something like Maryweather, but the actual naming of the town was given out in a lottery in the local pub, and a miner from Glasgow in Scotland actually won it and named it Rutherglen after the region of Glasgow where he was born. It's a little village just outside Glasgow, and that's where the Rutherglen name came from. So Charles Henry Morris decided that what he wanted to do was supply wine to these miners, and he was doing that, and he realized that he could make more money if you could actually sell the wine you were making. So he was very lucky. He had a horse, and if you ever see our emblem, it's always a barrel, which we're famous for, and I'll come on to those in due course, and a horse. And the reason the horse was called Fairfield, it was a champion steeplechaser, and it was sold. And the money from selling that horse actually went to plant the first vineyards. And so Morris wines became a thing. Fast forward many years, we're looking around 2015, 2016. I was working in Australia. The reason I'd come to Australia is a very strange story. Obviously, you can tell by my accent I was born in the UK, and I'd worked my way around the world by that point, really. And when I say around the world, I'd made most liquids. I'd worked on most distillations. I was based in Ireland and Scotland, and then I went over to the US. US led to South America. South America led to a different job, which took me through Africa and Asia. And somebody offered me a job in Australia, and I looked at the list, and it turned out Australia was the last inhabited continent I'd never made alcohol on. So I wanted 6 out of 7, so I came to Australia. So I was working in Australia. Now you're all thinking, how the hell is he going to get number 7? Well, that's easy. I've managed to convince my wife that I'm having a 60th birthday party on a cruise ship with an home brew kit around Antarctica. And as long as I can get somebody to drink my own brew, I'm going to class that as 7 out of 7. But going back to the story, I was in Australia 2014-15, and the gentleman I work for is a real passionate about spirits. So he's also very passionate about Australia. And what he would say is, we all drink Australian beers, we all drink Australian wines. Why don't we drink Australian spirits? Or why don't we drink Australian whiskey? So we started looking at how we could produce whiskey and see how we could move the industry forward in Australia. And then just about the same time, 2016, the Morris wines came up for sale. And we bought Morris wines to save it because there was rumours it would be closed down completely, and we moved and saved it. And then we had to see what we got. And one of the things we got is something what nobody else has. And I'll come on to this part of the story in more detail later as well. But we've got all these fortified barrels, hundreds of them. And they've held these fortified wines for 20, 30, 40 years. Some of the fortified wine vats are over 100 years old. And these have been maturing and producing every type of fortified wine you can name. So we're what we call a full fortified winery. We make muscat, tokay, port, sherry. Now in the wine world, you've got to call that a Pera, Topic, Muscat and Tawny. In the whiskey world, we're a little bit more generous and we can still use the old names. And these barrels were there. And I was thinking, well, we found the barrels for the Spirit Project anyway. But then out the back, we actually found a 1933 built copper hybrid pot still. Now, what do I mean by an hybrid pot still? I mean, it's got a pot and it's got the column. And the reason that was there is it was the still they used to use to make the fortification spirit back in the day. It had been abandoned. It wasn't being used anymore. So we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort to bring that still to life. And then I had to have a look at the plates in the still. So a column still has got plates in it as above the pot. Now, you don't want your spirit too clean if you're making whiskey. There's no point putting vodka in a barrel and expecting to get a whiskey. What you actually get is woody vodka. A whiskey has to mature in the barrel. And that maturation, that way that whiskey evolves is you carry some of the congeners, some of those natural fermentation products through with the spirit into the barrel. What then happens is that barrel acts on that spirit. So the lower the alcohol, the more extract. The higher the alcohol, it slows down the extract a little bit. However, you've also got to look that the Scots have been doing this for many, many years. And they found that ideal point of extraction and too many sheds. And there is a cut point. And that is around 63%, which is where we look to mature most of our spirit. What is happening in that wood, though, is something which I learnt at university. At the time, we're talking, what, 3 or 4 years ago since I was at uni? I wish. But yeah, we're talking a long time ago. And I thought, how can I sit through 12 weeks of lectures on wood? It sounded like it was going to be the most boring thing I've ever done. It actually turned out to be probably one of the most important. So wood, the lecturer had come up with this acronym called SAP, S-A-P, from the wood, and it stuck with me. But what that actually stands for is subtraction, addition, and production. So what that wood is doing is it's subtracting flavors, it's adding flavors, and it's producing flavors. And what that means, sorry, my little boy just came in the door. What that means is that you've got subtraction of flavors. So things are adhering to that carbon. You've got addition of flavors, which is the most common eyes of vanillin and vanillin coming in from the wood and giving you that sweetness, vanilla notes. And the other one is the production. So that's your alcohol and congeners going into the wood, reacting with the lignins and other wood materials and producing new flavors, which then come back out into the spirit. So what I'll actually do is I'll leave that story just there at the moment while we finish off nosing the and tasting the signature.
Yeah, John was just saying that he found a little touch of smokiness in it. It's fruity and a little bit sweet. I was surprised with, I got that like freshly baked bread kind of smoke, but you definitely got that sweetness through. And I know that the classic signature you love to drink with lemonade, don't you, Darren?
I do.
Yeah, it's so good. And I reckon I'm like, I would smash it with lemonade, but I drink it neat too.
And what I think the 44% does is it just carries a little bit more of those notes. Now, I always say that the signature I put together for my taste, because I don't like a whiskey what beats me up on the way down. I like something I can just drink and enjoy, and especially with lemonade, it gives you that lovely touch, and it's so easy to drink. Yeah. So that's the signature. A little bit of that sweetness, and I noticed people mentioning sweetness, and I'll come on to that when I explain the still a little bit more. So what I'm going to do, though, is looking at the time, I'm going to actually jump to the musket barrel. Now, again, the musket barrel in Australia is normally 46%. This is 48%. Again, it was built that little bit more robust for the US market, where the flavor profile of people is different. And I'll come on to that as well, that everyone has a different taste. Everybody prefers different things. But sometimes as a population, there is a preference. And the Americans like that little bit more burn and that little bit more aggressiveness, shall we say, in their spirit. So
I imagine the tax there is a little bit easier to get a higher ABV as well, though.
And I've said I've worked all the way around the world, and I'm not joking. And the strangest place I've ever made bourbon is Alabama. And in Alabama, I was sat having an argument with the distiller about the tax, that I paid more tax than him. And we kept doing the calculations, and he kept coming out more and more expensive than me every time. And it was only then that I realized I was talking a bottle and he was talking a barrel. That's the difference in the tax.
Yep.
So this one, musket barrel. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's a very similar spirit to the signature, but what I do is once it's finished in the barrels, I'll tell you about now. What I do is I put it into our award-winning barrels, or musket barrels. Musket has won Best in the World twice. It's won Muscat de Monde, it's won London, and that muscat seeps into that wood. And when we put our spirit in, we actually draw that muscat out. And that's why I'm glad you can taste the muscat at the end, because it'll show you how the spirit develops and how that fortified wine helps to round our whiskies. Now, In the muscat, and when you taste the wine, you'll understand that it's even more. What you normally get is a little bit of raisin, a little bit of sultana, some dried peel. It's literally Christmas cake in a glass, is muscat. And you're picking up those Christmas cake notes in this spirit. The spirit, again, is very, very clean when it goes into the first barrels. And you find just a richness and roundness and sweetness with it. It fills the mouth. It's
that viscosity, right?
Yeah.
It sticks on your tongue. It's so good. I get a lot of praline off of this as well, that like sweet but not fully sweet chocolatiness.
And I'm not picking it up tonight, but sometimes I get chocolate, and it's a very clear chocolate.
Yeah, mine Sane's got a great bouquet, and Jan's got the toffee notes as well. Yeah, that's great.
And when I say today, I'm serious. Everybody's taste is different, and it does depend on what you've done that day, what you've eaten that day, what you've drunk. You will taste things differently every day. And the example I use there is East and West Africa. West Africa like their beer quite strong, very, very sweet actually, and very diacetyl, which is unusual, but they like very, very spicy food. East Africa is very much more bland food, and they prefer like the Pilsner beer. And because of the diets, the things you like to eat actually affect how you can actually taste things later on. Now, I promised I'd go back to the barrels and the story. So obviously we got the still running, and we needed to make a good spirit, but we also needed to have good barrels, because no matter how good your spirit is, your barrels have to be there to be able to mature it. So what we did is we actually employed two experts. We employed a guy called Jim Swan, who you probably know of from other brands like Kavlan, etc. And we also employed a gentleman called John McDougall. Now, John McDougall has the distinction that he's near enough worked on, he has worked in every single area of Scotland. He's now near enough worked in every continent as well. But John McDougall has also got the distinction of being a master distiller and blender, which is unusual. Now, what I did there is, with Jim, I worked on the barrel program. So we've got other wineries in the Barossa and the Coonawarra. So we've got really good wine barrels. However, and this is where people's tastes change, I don't like that much wine influence in my whiskey. So we figured out a way to shave them back so that when they were refilled, it's almost like going into a fresh bourbon. How do we do that? Well, he came up with a program with us. We developed the barrel program, which I can't go into too much detail about. And then we actually built a cooperage. So we built our own cooperage, and we employed two coopers. So all our barrels are done in-house to our recipe. Those come down, and then we fill them with great new made spirit. I worked with John McDougall over many weeks, many months, looking at the plates, looking at the spirit coming off, understanding where I was going to make my cup points, because I wanted something clean but sweet, but with enough congeners to turn into a great spirit. That spirit then goes into the barrel, goes through that maturation. Why can we mature things so quickly? Because we've got a massive spread of temperatures compared to Scotland. So my winter will be -4, -5. I know Scotland might be -10 sometimes, but John McDougall once said to me, Darren, in an heat wave, you're going to have to slow your stills down. I said, oh God, what's an heat wave, John? He said 22 or 23. I said, okay. So what we'll do is we'll take that as the winter temperature during the day, and we have chillers chilling our water to chill our condensers, because we will go from that -6 to that 45, 41, 44 in the summer. It's a massive swing. So you really get that diurnal temperature driving that spirit in and out of that wood and driving that maturation. The other thing to remember is increased temperatures increase reaction rates. So if you go back to your old school chemistry, if you wanted to increase a reaction, you could either increase the concentration or you could increase the temperature that you did the reaction at. So when we're up at 40 degrees centigrade, we're going much faster maturation wise than if you're down at 22 degrees centigrade. And that's why the spirit matures so nicely in our barrels. You also have to balance your spirit though. So you look at your spirit you're putting into the barrel, because the spirit has to be the right type of spirit, carry the right esters and congeners, etc., to be able to mature in a warmer temperature. So you're looking at everything all the way through. And I think what that actually does is it comes together very nicely in our maturation barrels and then finishes beautifully on this whiskey in our finishing barrels, which are our muscat barrels.
Yeah, cool. John and Rob essentially asked the same question kind of at the same time, due on a wavelength. And it's just that so the base spirit for all these whiskeys is the same. You're not varying the barley or any cut points or anything like that. It's just the barrel maturation that makes the difference and shapes the flavor.
At the moment, though, there is one coming up at the end, which is slightly different. And we are doing other things as well in the background. But what we've done firstly is, because we're so well known for our fortified wines, we've used those fortified finishings to start with, and then we'll bring in other innovations afterwards.
Yeah, but the base new make spirit's the same for everything.
At the moment, yeah. But that doesn't mean it will be in the future.
Exciting times ahead. Now, I know that, because obviously we've talked that Morris is famous for fortified wines, but I also know that the winery is famous for Durif.
It is.
Table wine. Is that something we might see in the future as a old Durif red wine kind of casking, or is that not in keeping with your dislike of too winey whiskies?
At the end of the day, the only way I can answer that is it has to work.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to do a really fine Durif offering. And the reason we're so famous for Durif is in the 1800s, I think phylloxera came through, which is a vine mite, and Durif was planted as one of the vines which could survive phylloxera in the area. And back then, most red wine ended up in port. The Australian market was very much a fortified wine market. It was fortified wines for the miners and the soldiers, and it was easy to transfer. About the 50s, this started to change, and into the 70s especially, it started to swing from being a fortified wine market into a table wine market. And David Morris, who's the winemaker at the moment who I work with on the wine side within Morris, his father actually pioneered and started to pioneer Durif as a table wine. So Durif is very close to our hearts. The one issue I always find with red wines is the wood can add a lot of tannin in a warm climate, and with a red wine you've already got that tannin, and sometimes you get something what's over tannic, and it's something we've got to manage. But that doesn't mean no. What it means is we've got to get it right, because I don't like releasing anything until it's right.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say as well, phylloxera is a really interesting thing. I know we're at a whiskey tasting, but it is a wine geek thing that I actually am interested in, because phylloxera swept through Europe and killed like most of their vines. So I believe a lot of wineries in Europe are using cuttings that were taken from Australia, because Australia wasn't really as affected.
Yes. True. So to keep the old varieties, and what they do is they took rootstocks from other places which were, so it's a tiny mite what attacks the roots of the vine and kills them. But some rootstocks were immune to it. So what you do is you graft the for wine type you want onto an immune rootstock. And that's how they saved a lot of the old style grapes.
And I suppose we kind of have to be thankful, because now we have all these amazing wines and fortified wines and stuff for our barrel maturation, which is always convenient.
So I was talking about the muscat in this one. Now we're going to move on to the sherry, and we could call it a sherry, for it's a sherry barrel I'm talking about. The wine is in a pairer, and what I'll do is while we taste that one, I'll explain a little, and I know that it is a whiskey tasting, but I think it's worth explaining a little bit about fortified wines and why they're so unique. And so the sherry though, now please don't expect a massive sweet sherry bomb. It's not. It's our pairer, and it's actually a dry style. And I did this on purpose because muscat carries all that sweetness and roundness and viscosity, and I wanted something slightly different. So what you actually smell, first of all, is a little bit of the Apera note, that dry Fino sherry type note. There's a little bit of nuts. And then when you taste it, it's actually quite sharp. And it's quite dry, quite tannic, quite hot. But then this wave of almost citrus comes up and washes away that heat. Now, our Apera is absolutely unique to our vineyard. So same as every bodega in Spain, they have their own fleur. Now the fleur is the yeast and material which grows on top of the wine. Now that protects the wine from oxygen, but it also gives it its flavour. It's what makes it sherry. And each distinct bodega has its own fleur. Well, obviously, we have a winery in Australia, so this is the Mia fleur. It's the fleur of the Mia winery, so nobody can copy this Apera because it's unique to our environment. And so that makes this whiskey extremely unique because I'm able to use our own casks. Now, I said I'd explain a little bit about fortified wines and where that sweetness comes from and that richness comes from. And what that is we actually take grapes and we start them to ferment. We let them to ferment to about a day, just to let them to get a little bit of alcohol, 2-3% alcohol. And then we press them and we get the juice out of them. Now that's still fermenting, so it's now about 4% alcohol, but loads of sugar. And then we add fortification spirit, and that yeast is killed. So now you've got a really alcoholic, sugary liquid. And we put it into one of our barrels, and 20 or 30 years later, you take it out and it's muscat. But the interesting thing is, all the way through that maturation, we check it and we top up the alcohol to keep it fortified, but we are not by law allowed to add sugar. So when you taste a fortified wine, you're actually drinking sugar from the grapes that was used to make it. So then think that a few years ago, we did our 160th anniversary. And one of the wines we used in that was pre-1930 wine. So we were actually tasting and drinking sugar, which grew before man walked on the moon. We were drinking sugar before World War II. You were drinking sugar that old. So at some point, a grape grew in Rutherglen in Australia, made some sugar, and how many years is it now? 60 years later, you're drinking that sugar. Now, I normally make the joke about that sugar over 20 years old does not have calories. I wish that was true. But, yeah. So the sherry, though, what do people think of the sherry?
Yeah, please pop your tasting notes in. I'm super curious. I got that like really dried strawberries, like when you get dried organic strawberries on the nose. And that dryness really comes through on the palate. I've never been a massive fan of the drier styles of sherry, like Fino and Amontillado and stuff like that. But it's a good balance, but you can still like it is very reminiscent of when you get those like virgin French oak cask whiskeys, that woodiness. Yeah, Jen, the woody, you can taste the wood.
Works fabulous in something like an eyeball though. That citrus really works, and it just cuts through that sharpness. And yeah, that's how I like to drink this one.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, Martin's saying dry and sharp pairs nicely. Yeah, I mean, like, if you put this on a platter for like, you know how people get pairing platters and stuff like that. Like if you put that out on a sherry taster thing, like nobody would question. They'd be like, sherry's a bit boozier than normal.
Yeah.
But that was really fascinating to know as well, that you can't add sugar by law, because like I feel like I knew that, but I also didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, actually, in the Australian wine industry, because we're new and because we're trying to protect ourselves, we actually have stricter laws than the French sometimes. And it's just an Australian wine institute really does protect what is classed as quality wine. But yeah, I'm glad people are enjoying them so far. Where did I go with the story? We've got the barrel maturations. So my still, we called Aurora, by the way. The reason we called it Aurora is Aurora, as everybody knows, obviously, is Sleeping Beauty. And she was a Sleeping Beauty. So then about 2 years ago, we found her sister still. Now, her sister still was up in Griffith, and we brought her out of another winery. Same style, same make, made by hand in the 1930s. We call her the sister because she's absolutely identical, apart from one thing, which is that she was handmade. And being handmade, she's 1/4 of an inch smaller, so 6 mil smaller than her sister. And that's it. That's how good these guys were. Built in Adelaide, the same. 3,400 litre charge. You get about 600 litres of good arts out of there. And then the heads and tails obviously recycle. We brought her down, we got her up and running. She's running as well now, and we actually called her Ella. And the reason we called her Ella was Cinderella, because she too should come to the ball. So you can tell I've got small kids because it's the Disney. But yeah, so that's the story on the 2 stills. The winery is still making great fortified wines, but then the next whiskey I'd like to take you on is a little bit different. So this one is one of my favorite whiskies because I think I won an argument. It does polarize people. Some people think I won the argument. Some people think I don't. And it all started because I'm a distiller. I love making whiskies. I love peated whiskey. Really love the really heavily peated whiskey. And my marketing person hates them. Now, saying that, he hates those big phenolic Isla type peats, but he doesn't like peated whiskey. The other thing is, what we're doing is the barley is local to Australia, so it's Australian barley. The water obviously is Australian. We've tried to be as Australian as possible. We use 100% Australian ingredients, and although there are some places coming through with some peat in Australia, I still don't think it's there for me yet. And so I wanted to make a smoky whiskey. We couldn't use peat. So what I did is I had an argument with him, and I told him that I would make him an excellent smoky whiskey, and at no point would I use peat. So what I did is I cheated. I got my cooper to incinerate barrels. Now I say incinerate because these weren't charred, these weren't toasted. I said go as far as we dare. And when it's safe to do so, when you can still trap the acrid smoke, put the ends on. and seal it and get them down to me as fast as you can. So they did that. I then thought, oh, what will mix with this smokiness? Well, we know sweet and smoke work together. Sweet and smoke work absolutely everywhere. So I used the muscat, and that's why it's the smoked muscat, because we found the sweetness of the muscat whiskey, and I used finished muscat whiskey in these barrels over time, picked up that smokiness. So when you taste this, I don't want you to think of peat at all. I want you to forget Scotland. Scotland's got its little peaty smoke. This is Australia. This is campfire. This is bushfire. This is a smell I don't want to smell when I go to work in the morning because I'm watching the fields. This is that smell after a good barbecue with your friends. So on the nose, straight away, you should be picking up that woody note, that wood smoke note, with a little bit of sweetness, that morning bonfire when you're smelling the ashes. Then on the mouth, lots of sweetness up front, lots of that muscat comes through. You get those raisins, and then it rushes away to a barbecue, tangy smoke flavour in the mouth. I think I won the argument. I hope you do too. I think it's a really nice smoky whiskey. I never claim it's peated. It is a smoky whiskey.
Yeah, well, people are going off about it in the chat. I think it's the most chatter we've had on any of the whiskeys tonight. It's definitely one of those things that's like, it can be polarizing. But yeah, David was saying it's smoke on your clothes after a campfire, and that is absolutely bang on. I will say on the nose, I get a bit of, as a child, I used to melt crayons on the windowsill, on the wooden windowsill.
There was always one.
yeah, we've all done it. So it's got a little bit of that like warm waxiness, viscosity and stuff. Just definitely on the nose, the smoke. Martin says it's perfect. Delicious, it's superb from Anthony. So smoky flavors all from the barrel, says Jen. Yes, it is all from the barrel. There's no peat, shockingly. But one thing that I kind of forgot to cover in your intro, Darren, is you are very technically knowledgeable when it comes to producing whiskey. Probably one of the most technically, knowledgeable distillers that I'm friends with, and it really shines through in a whiskey like this, just showcasing what you can do in the flavor, by taking another route.
Yeah, just thinking around. So many of my jobs in the past were thinking around problems within brewing and distilling, and especially in the distilling. How do we do something differently? So I studied brewing and distilling, 96 I graduated. I've then worked, like I said, all over the world, and it's just you learn new things. I still learn new things every day, and it's then being able to put them together. So thank you for that. But yes, it's nice to be able to put them together.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Rob says you definitely won the argument. Anthony saying it's a Morris barbecue. Paul, sweet and smoky with a lovely finish, loving it. Ranjan says he loves Lapsang Souchong, but it was not his cup of tea, and then he took it back because he put a few drops of water in it. Now loves it. Just amazing. It's very different from the Archie Rose smoked whiskies as well. Yeah, I totally agree, Michael.
There's many different ways to do smoked whiskies as well. So I'm not saying this is the only way. It isn't. Because this was a barrel way I played with, because we're famous for barrels, and I could get my coopers to do this. You can smoke malt as well. So that's where you take malt and you actually pass smoke through. So you can pass Manuka's being used in New Zealand, wood smokes in other places. Peat smoke is being used a little bit like that in Australia at the moment, where it adheres to the surface. That is slightly different to the Scottish method, which is where the peat smoke is introduced during the drying process. So it actually goes all the way into the wet grain and actually adheres and interacts with the water in the grain as the grain dries. So you get a different type of peaty smoke again. And something what a lot of people don't realise is there's about 5 different peats in Scotland. So your big phenolic Lefroy is totally different to your smoother, gentler Talisker, and it's because of where the peat is dug. So smoke is quite complex in itself, but I never really got very many lectures on smoke.
Fair enough. Well, I do have a very important question that's just popped up. One person in the chat is about to run out of their bottle. Are you guys re-releasing it? Is it going to be one more thing?
There's not a lot. It destroys barrels. That's why it was a limited release. There may be some more put down, but not that much, because it really does. When I say incinerate a barrel, I didn't mean crocodile char the barrel. I meant, oh dear, should we stop burning this barrel now? So it does destroy barrels. Obviously, I took a bit of a gamble with the musket. So I did lay other things down as well, because I was not going to lose this argument. So we will see what happens in the future. Like all the things we do, I taste my whiskies in batches. We look after our whiskies, we taste our whiskies. And when it's ready, it's ready. And it happened that this was the one what worked really well and was ready. That does not mean other things won't be ready in the future. As for the smoked muscat, I'm not sure where we are on stocks, to be honest. I'd have to talk to my things. I think there are a few bottles still left for sale, but and I think you've got it listed tonight, have you, Emma?
We do have it listed tonight with the 10% off, which automatically applies. So if you're running low, if your bottle is out, I will share the link. I'll share the link now, and I'll share it again later tonight, so that you can stock up for what is left.
Yes,
because nobody wants that whiskey FOMO.
And it is, and that's why it is limited release, because of what I had to do to those barrels. Okay, so that's the whiskies I've taken you through. I hope the journey of how Morris came around as a winery. I think we've gone through some of the stills. If there's any technical questions, please ask them. I will do my best to answer. What I will do now, though, for the last 10 minutes, is the treat, which is the very dark, sticky whiskey. Now, this is pure muscat. This is cellar reserve muscat. So there's a classification of muscat. So if you like really fruity muscats, you're going to be looking at something like the Rutherglen, which is the black label. Then you have the classic, then you have the reserve, and then you've got the old premium. Now, some of our whiskies do use the old premium type cask, but at the moment, this is a cellar reserve. So you're talking at least 15 years old, probably up to 25 years old, depending on how David's put it together to be consistent. So what you can see straight away is the lovely colour. Now, muscat is made from the brown muscat grape, and it's the class is a red grape. And this one, you can straight away smell raisins, sultanas, dried fruit. You've got the alcohol coming through from the fortification. It just sits there. Tonight I'm picking up a little bit of prunes as well. And then on the flavour, it just sits there. It's just thick, it's vicious. You've got Christmas cake, you've got mincemeat from mince pies. You've got dried fruit peel. You've got just a richness. It's almost indescribable. David Morris is just unbelievable at doing these fortified wines. I have just seen something in the comment. Anyone else want to pour it over vanilla ice cream? Yes.
There is no judgment.
Yeah, I believe it's also the way to get out of trouble. So if you're ever feeling bad or you're in trouble, Muscat over ice cream is a winner every time, I've been told.
Yeah, treacle, Paul says. I will say, so every time I visit Morris, I'm pretty sure I always pick up a fortified wine along with tasting the whiskey and stuff. I think it's the number one thing I walk out of the distillery with. But if you ever get the chance to go to Rutherglen, it's this great big sign in the center of town, and it's one of my favorite things ever. It says, Sydney may have a good harbor, but Rutherglen's got a great port. And that just makes me smile every time I see it. And I mean, the region itself, the fortified wine is so incredible. And, you know, so obviously we wanted to share this little special dribble with you guys. Not a lot of distillers get the chance to have, you know, their fortified wines and to really know where it's coming from, and also the transportation costs are quite low, which is convenient.
Everything's perfectly in a circle. So we own the wineries for the maturation. We actually have our own little family brewery, which produces my wash. So everything's in house.
Yeah.
So I've got control, and these barrels are supreme. And to have control of that is unbelievable.
Yeah. So this is this a, Ranger was just asking, is this a Cellar Reserve Grand Muscat?
This is the Cellar Reserve Grand Muscat.
Yeah, Grand Muscat. Yeah, I think this is my husband's favorite. Ian and Karen say it's all the best Christmas flavors in a handy glass. Absolutely. Anti-Ugg boots, fire, Morris Reserve Muscat for this winter. John's after a technical question.
Yes,
what ABV do you start and end your hearts and tails of the whiskey? Where do you make your cuts?
Obviously, it does depend on how the still's running slightly. I would say our average alcohol coming off as arts is around 71. So I'm looking at both flavour, temperature, and congeners. So we still do the glass test, I still do the nose test. We look at temperatures on the still, and we also look at the alcohol. So what I can say is the arts is around somewhere between 70 and 72.
Fair enough. Easy. I'm also just seeing Jan's put a excellent breakfast of champions comment in that they're saving their sample to put on their yogurt in the morning instead of blueberry yogurt, just muscat yogurt. That's fine. Well, I'm going to launch the poll as well, and you guys can vote for your two favorites of the night. We have added the fortified on there just as a, you know, for shits and giggles, but please pop in what you think was the top whiskey for you. I will say the first time I tried that smoked muscat, I think it was at the show that you launched it at, and I was busy and I was just like running around all over the place and all that. I was just like, oh yeah, it's okay. But having the chance to sit down and sip on it now, I'm like, oh man, like I wish I'd picked up the bottle then.
Well, hopefully, we're in the moment. Well, you know the construction, what's going on at Morris Wines at the moment. So hopefully, either very late this year or early next year, we should have a new cellar door opening. So there should be a nice experience starting, and hopefully there'll be distillery tours as well. So that's for the future. But yeah, it would be nice for, if anybody's ever in the region, we have got a cellar door. Pop in, talk to the guys in the cellar door. They know lots and lots about wine. They know lots and lots about the region. It's really worth a visit. So there's more than just us in the area doing the wines as well. So it's really worth a weekend up to Rutherglen.
Yeah, it's absolutely a beautiful place. And I will say as well, bonus, if you're into distillery cats, there is a distillery cat. Her name's Coco, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
stray
Coco.
cat who decided, yeah, this is my home now.
Yeah, so Coco's normally in charge of the place, and I come second, to be honest.
Yeah, amazing. Well, does anybody have any more questions before I announce the poll results? Because we're almost at the end. If you haven't voted, please pop a vote in. and we'll showcase it. I don't know if I made you co-host, Darren, so I don't think you can see the results yet, can you?
No, not at the moment. What I would say though is, yeah, I left about 5 minutes at the end. So if there is any other questions, please ask them.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
also obviously available at the cellar door as well. So if you've got some burning question you've not asked, you're more than welcome to ring the cellar door. And if I can answer it, I will answer it.
Yeah. If he's on his lunch break, you're out of luck.
What's one of those?
Yeah, fair enough. Alrighty. Well, I don't think it surprises anybody that the smoked musket is the pick. It's great to see the Musket Barrel Cellar Reserve is a winner as well. I definitely loved that one. But yeah, amazing stuff to see. I do appreciate those of you who voted for the fortified wine. Love it. We do actually have a question from Julie and Susan. Will you guys do another Tokay barrel release? I know that it was for the Whiskey Club, I think it was.
Yes, we did some for the Whiskey Club. Obviously, as with everything, you lay down what you can, and those barrels were right and ready, as we could see. There is more stock laid down. I have been tasting it, and I am now at the point where you can't tell the difference between the two releases. So therefore, I would watch this space very closely very soon.
Yeah, that's excellent to hear. I did manage to try the Tokay. I think when last time I was up there, it was excellent. And I agree with Tom. Haven't had a bad Morris yet, fortified wine or whiskey. So keep doing the excellent things that you do.
I like Tom's got a. Oh, nice.
What is this? What was that? Special cut. Oh, oof, fancy bottles of liqueur musket. That I love. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I will share the link again. 10% off all Morris whiskey, just Morris, unfortunately, because it is again coming directly from the distillery, which is why we're getting these amazing special stuff. Definitely make the trip down there if you get the chance. Rutherglen is one of my absolute favorite places to visit, and you will absolutely enjoy your time. And yeah, Darren is around. That is really a special moment at a distillery, getting to, be there and chat. But thank you so much, Darren, for your time. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Darren, if you and Laura wanted to hang on for a little bit for a debrief.
Yes, it would be perfect.
Everyone, I hope you enjoy your night. Stay warm. It is getting colder now, unfortunately, but you've got an excellent musket to see you through the evening. So take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
You. And thank you guys for tasting the whiskey. Thank you.
Oh, that's actual tasting from Julie and Susan. That's awesome. I love that. It's always nice to see familiar faces and new faces.
Yes.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Orestes, we're also sending out another fresh musket sample for you. So we've got that on the way. No worries. Great night. Hi, Laura. I saw you sneak in a little bit later on. Right. Oh, good. That went wonderful.
Did
Excellent.
you? Was that okay?
Yeah, no, it was great. I think like people really switched on, especially when I got talking to, like, when you were talking about the sherry barrel and the fortified wine production. And oh my God, I'm getting my hair all over David's desk. That's not a good thing to do. Yeah, I think that insight is something that not a lot of people get. And because like we love whiskey and we love wine, but that fortified wine falls into that like black hole of information of like, it's sweet and it happens somehow.
Yes. And it's nice to be able to show them how it does help whiskey to develop.
Yeah.
And how it does help round the whiskies. Are you there, Lara?
Oh, I will stop the recording as well, actually. Recording.